I am incredibly alarmed by what appears to be our First Amendment rights being attacked. This is what I do for a living. I don't like that. But you know he's coming. The man is coming. And you have to adjust accordingly.
Well, that was Stephen A. Smith talking about the Jimmy Kimmel situation. And when I heard him say that, I thought to myself, what exactly does he mean?
Kamala Harris's new book is set to come out on Tuesday, and it appears she is going scorched earth. And few Democrats will come out unscathed. Among the Democrats she is calling out are former President Joe Biden, Minnesota Governor and her former running mate, Tim Walz, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, California Governor Gavin Newsom, and Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, to name a few. According to people who have read the book, Mayor Pete was her first choice for running mate, but she worried about his liability on the ticket, an idea that Buttigieg took particular exception to. Listen to his response.
I was surprised when I read that. I just believe in giving Americans more credit than that. My experience in politics has been that the way that you earn trust with voters is based mostly on what they think you're going to do for their lives, not on categories. And I wouldn't have run for president if I didn't believe that.
She also called out Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, characterizing him as too eager for the VP job. Governor Shapiro joined Stephen A. Smith and made some interesting comments about Kamala. Take a look.
How should we feel when we hear something that we suspected but wasn't acknowledged by politicians who were looking for our support? And then we find out later we were right and they should have spoken up and they should have shown more courage. What do you say to that?
I mean, look, I haven't read the former vice president's book, and she's going to have to answer to how she was in the room and yet never said anything publicly.
Now, among her many criticisms of former President Biden, Kamala reveals one particularly bizarre story in which she says Biden called her right before her debate with President Trump and said his brother told him that her people were bad-mouthing him among donors. She also said she, quote, had no idea that she had pulled the pin on a hand grenade when she gave this disastrous answer on The View, all but sinking her own campaign. You'll remember this.
If anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
We're starting to get more information from Kamala Harris's forthcoming memoir, 107 Days, about her time as the presidential candidate in 2024. And there is something about who she wanted to pick as VP, vice president, that I think is very worth your time, because I think it's revealing about Harris, and it's why I'm skeptical Harris is going to be the 2028 Democratic presidential nominee. All right, let's start with what she said. So Jonathan Lemire at The Atlantic got a look at least some of her memoir. And in what he saw, he quotes Harris about her preferred vice presidential pick, not Tim Walz, who she picked, not Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, who I think she should have picked, but Department of Transportation head Pete Buttigieg. Yes, Mayor Pete. Here's what she said about Buttigieg. He, quote, would have been an ideal partner if I were a straight white man. She then adds, quoting her, but we were already asking a lot of America to accept a woman married to a Jewish man. Part of me wanted to say, screw it, let's just do it. But knowing what was at stake, it was too big of a risk. And I think Pete also knew that, to our mutual sadness. Now, there's a lot there. We know that Buttigieg was not in Harris's final three. We believe it was Shapiro definitely and Walz, but not Buttigieg. And in the excerpt quoted there in The Atlantic, basically she eliminates him from her final list, Buttigieg, from her final list for that exact reason, that she just doesn't think America is ready for a gay man and a black woman as the nominees. Now, I'm going to explain why I think that actually is Harris's problem in a second. But before I do that, let me do this first. Before I do that, let me quickly make a pitch to you, which is become a subscriber. 2 words: independent, authentic. Independent, always telling you what I think, not owned by big media, not controlled by other political party. Authentic, not in the business of fan service. Just gonna give you my straight up opinion, my straight up analysis. Sometimes you'll agree, sometimes you won't, but I'm not just chasing subscribers. I'm in it for the long term. Okay. Before I get to why I think Harris writing that she wanted to pick Buttigieg and not picking Buttigieg is really revealing, let me first put a big caveat in.
Summarize the Democrat Party in a single word: skepticism. That seems accurate. Seems accurate, right? Look, folks, the Democrats, they're on the ropes, I think. Each and every day is yet another, almost multiple times a day now, is another crushing blow, pounding away at whatever little bit of resistance or resilience they still manage to possess, to hold their head up to some degree and go out there and show face as if they are a party worth mentioning.
As we learned, an armed man is now in custody after entering the memorial site posing as a law enforcement officer.
Matt Finn joins us now outside the State Farm Stadium where the service is being held. Good morning, Matt.
Hi, Rachel. It is a calm, beautiful morning here on the ground right now. And of course, it'll be a much different scene at this hour tomorrow, where we expect thousands of people across the country, maybe even the world, to arrive here at State Farm Stadium. They're going to be greeted by intense federal and local security, obviously sweeping for not just the president, but a long list of VIPs. But ahead of tomorrow morning's memorial for Charlie Kirk, the Secret Service says a suspicious man with a gun and a knife was taken into custody yesterday after he was found inside State Farm Stadium, according to the Washington Post. Secret Service says the unidentified man was exhibiting suspicious behavior inside the Now, the report says the man claimed to be law enforcement but showed fake credentials. The Secret Service writing in a statement, the individual is not a member of authorized law enforcement working the event and is currently in custody. The U.S. Secret Service and local law enforcement are investigating the circumstances as to why he was at the location. Tomorrow's memorial for Charlie Kirk here in Glendale, Arizona at State Farm, home to the Arizona Cardinals, has been designated a Tier 1 level event equivalent to a Super Bowl. DHS saying that designation is reserved for events of the highest national significance.
Charlie was an amazing man. He was not only an influential political commentator, but he was a man of great faith, of deep faith. And, you know, before I take the podium, I always pray to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I will continue to do that. And I will continue to think about Charlie and how he so boldly spoke the truth and courageously spoke about his faith. And I know so many, the president, the vice president, the Speaker of the House, we have cabinet secretaries who will be speaking at his memorial service tomorrow in Arizona. We're actually taking 2 planes full of White House staff. That just speaks to how many people he touched at the highest levels of our government, and he will surely be honored and remembered tomorrow.
Is there a possibility that we could eradicate the Democrat Party? Could we see a future of Republican, independent, and then that's just it? Maybe the America Party Elon talked about. But, you know, the idea from a fellow YouTube content creator for which I've never seen before. This is YouTube's algorithm doing its algorithmic things, for which I heard today, subscribe if you haven't already, because if you don't, you may never see this channel again. The talking head there says, well, America was not prepared or wouldn't be in theory based on Kamala Harris. And this book of hers that's coming out that's going to be fixing wobbly table legs more so than being read, being used to, fuel fires probably in the event of an emergency. Kamala is done, folks. The Democrats are done, but I think Kamala Harris is done. Like, finished. There's no chance, okay? Michelle and I, we were talking about this earlier today, and I told her that likely what we should see moving forward is Tim Walz running for president. If Tim Walz doesn't even throw his hat in the ring, then that should tell America, more so importantly, Democrats, a lot based on his involvement in 2024, what he thinks about this country. And granted, I think he's up for re-election in Minnesota. So, he should really bow out of that and say he's going to put all his efforts towards being a presidential candidate. I'm not sure if he'd be able to pull it off and afford it, because he himself says that he is of meager upbringing. Doesn't even know what a hedge fund manager does. So I don't know if he would be able to afford that. And despite Tesla stock going to the moon, he might have sold all of his off because he's just so hate-filled towards Elon Musk. But realistically, I don't think that the Democrats can get away without running a primary, and therefore their presidential candidate would have to be nominated. And without introducing a candidate that the world, this country doesn't even know exists, Gavin Newsom is probably leading the charge. Stephen A. Smith, I think, could do it, but Stephen A. Smith is not presidential material. But he does have a place. He does have a role. We're going to talk about that. And I think it would be worth noting and pointing out the likelihood of the Democrats' strategy right now, whereas they're not sitting there thinking to themselves, who is going to be best suited for America, for Americans, for Democrats and Republicans, no matter who votes for us or not, but just making this country a better place. They're really only thinking about who's going to be the most likely to trick voters, people into coming to the polls for us, which means that names like Jasmine Crockett could be a consideration, as the Democrats would want to push the idea of some sort of racial divide and loudmouth, code switching, ghetto ratchet puppet for which they can control, because she's already on her way out of Congress, depending on how you want to look at it. There is that, okay? Coupled with the idea that they're going to have to actually get the votes, because they've already said that President Trump is going to use ICE and DHS and law enforcement, the National Guard, how dare he, to keep illegal voters out of the polls. Yeah. Think about that.
Now, I'm going to explain why I think that actually is Harris's problem in a second. But before I do that, let me do this first. Before I do that, let me quickly make a pitch to you, which is become a subscriber. 2 words: independent, authentic. Independent, always telling you what I think, not owned by big media, not controlled by other political party. Authentic, not in the business of fan service. Just gonna give you my straight up opinion, my straight up analysis. Sometimes you'll agree, sometimes you won't, but I'm not just chasing subscribers. I'm in it for the long term. Okay. Before I get to why I think Harris writing that she wanted to pick Buttigieg and not picking Buttigieg is really revealing, let me first put a big caveat in. Vice presidents don't get a president elected. Okay. It just doesn't happen. I know we in the media focus a lot on the VP pick, who's it going to be and who's on the short list. But it really very rarely matters. The last time I can think it mattering was 1960 when JFK picked Lyndon Baines Johnson as his vice president as a way to bring the South into the Democratic fold. But after that, like, I hear people argue, well, Sarah Palin tanked John McCain. Do you think John McCain was going to beat Barack Obama in 2008 if he had picked the best possible VP nominee? No. Did Palin help? No, of course not. She undermined McCain's message, which was we need a trusted hand on the tiller. And Obama isn't one. Well, picking Sarah Palin revealed that neither was McCain, at least in that regard. Okay. So they matter at the margins, right? But people vote for the top of the ticket. So let's say that Harris had picked Pete Buttigieg. I don't think Kamala Harris would be president right now, but I also don't think she would have lost because she picked Buttigieg. I don't think Harris lost because she picked Tim Walz. I don't think if Harris had picked the person I thought she should have picked, because I thought it was the smartest strategic move, Josh Shapiro, she would have won, right? VPs do not decide presidential elections, even when.
But whoever it is needs to have strong international relationships, if you ask me. However, Kamala, I don't think, especially given the fact that she said that she's done more or less on Stephen Colbert, as they were both talking about losing their jobs and being fired for being the best at being the worst, right next to Jimmy Kimmel, whose ratings were in the toilet. Jimmy Kimmel, by the way, didn't get fired or Jimmy Kimmel has not lost his First Amendment rights of freedom of speech, and nor did his employer. Let's just put it that way. But I digress. As we heard, America, according to Kamala, just wasn't ready for a strong black woman and a gay man running for president and vice president, for which she's probably right. Which is exactly why she wouldn't have had an issue, because she's not a strong black woman. But apparently America was ready for a gay man and a black trans woman. All right, whatever. Vice presidents don't get presidents elected. Or do they? What do you guys think? I mean, J.D. Vance definitely played a role here. But Trump, could he have run on his own and won without a VP? Probably. Was it because he was going up against Kamala? No. It's because President Trump is exactly who America wanted in 2020 and in 2024 and in 2028 so far. We may see Trump 2028, right? We may see Trump 2028, The left hates it when you say that, but we may see Trump 2028. There was a big to-do about President Trump's VP selection. The RNC was a big deal. Byron Donalds, Doug Burgum, Rubio, Byron Donalds. Side note, apparently there's been announcements that there's going to be a midterm RNC. So that's pretty cool, right? Trump knows how to do things the right way, right? And JD is a great VP. I think he's a great VP. I think he would make a great president. But we're not going to get too far out over ahead of our skis here, put too many carts in front of the horses. We've got a lot of time left to get a lot of things done to determine who's going to beat the crap out of the Democrats in the next presidential election and who we want to see go up against whom in debates, because it's going to be a popcorn-worthy televised event. And we are going to be here for it, watch parties and all. So subscribe, because if you don't, you may never see this channel again. It's interesting how the YouTube algorithm works. And I actually came across YouTube's latest announcement, for which they're making changes to the way ads are run inside videos. YouTube is also going to be here for it, for the long haul, but they're changing the way the game works and monetization and ultimately how they make their money. Stay tuned for that. But Stephen A. Smith, what role will he play in the future? It's a good question. I don't think he's going to throw his hat in the ring for a presidential run. It would be stupid. He's smarter than that. But I do think he's going to have a very, very loud and almost obnoxious-like voice throughout it all that we need to be prepared for. perhaps maybe like News Nation on steroids with this somewhat independent center of center viewpoint, wanting to vote Democrat, but also can't ignore the fact that the Democrats are absolutely insane. Allegedly. At the end of the day, Gavin Newsom is likely the most logical Democrat nominee. What do you guys think? Let me know.
Drop down below in the comments if you guys like Senator John Fetterman and think that he's one of the last few decent Democrats in the Democrat Party, okay? Do you guys think that Senator John Fetterman is the very best of their party, okay? It's like there's only, it's like there's very few Fettermans left in the Democrat Party these days. I mean, with how woke and unhinged they are these days, okay? So I really think that Senator John Fetterman is like one of the only senators that with common sense left in the Democratic Party. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comments.
Left has done tremendous damage to the country, but we're fixing it. Most of the violence is on the left.
It doesn't matter if it's coming from one side or from the other, directed at one party or another. It is all wrong. We have a responsibility to be clear and unequivocal in calling out all forms of political violence.
Well, tonight in our Common Ground segment, a conversation on bringing the nation together, or trying to restore civility in politics.
And if you are interested in saving money, specifically on your Medicare, then make sure you give our friends at Chapter a call. And I want you guys to really, really pay attention here, because it's come to my attention that most seniors are not on the best Medicare plan. They're either overpaying for the same coverage they could get elsewhere, or they don't have the coverage they need in an emergency. Chapter can review your options in under 20 minutes. It's fast, it's simple, it's easy, and it's free. If you're already on the best possible plan, they'll tell you they're unbiased and they're purely here to help folks, seniors, save money on healthcare, on average $1,100. And if you're not on the right plan, they'll help you switch, even if it's to a plan that pays them nothing. Again, unbiased, folks. This is unique and unlike any other Medicare provider out there. And this is exactly why we love Chapter so much, because they're literally just trying to help people. Chapter works for you, not big insurance or the government. And there's no pressure, just honest, free advice from professionals who know Medicare inside and out.